Hey, you made it, and I couldn't be happier to have you here. If it's your first time, go ahead and subscribe, and share this with someone who'd get a kick out of it. And tell me, where are you watching from? Your comments are the highlight of my day. Let's go! My daughter let out a sharp, humorless laugh. So this is what real men do? Just forgive infidelity? She said, standing in the middle of my living room like she was delivering a verdict, reciting her mother's poison like it was sacred truth. For 4 years I'd held my tongue, allowing her to believe I alone had torn our family apart. But that afternoon, something within me snapped. I walked over to a drawer I had sworn never to touch again, unlatched it, and retrieved a small USB stick. "You want the truth?" I said, plugging it into the TV. "Just understand, once you've seen this, there's no going back." As the footage started, I watched the confidence slowly vanish from her face, her perfect, untouchable mother now on screen, welcoming unfamiliar men into our home. And that was only the beginning. When she realized where these visits had taken place, the color drained completely from her face. There are betrayals that don't just hurt, they leave permanent scars. Some truths don't just end marriages, they demolish the very foundation of trust. My name is Aaron Chase. I'm 43 years old, have been divorced for 4 years, and now live alone in a modest 3-bedroom house just outside Chicago. This isn't the life I once pictured, but life rarely follows the plans we set. That day began like any other. I was half-heartedly watching a baseball game, the sound low, barely paying attention, when Jessa walked in, unannounced. At 20, my daughter had inherited her mother's intensity, and ever since the divorce, she'd spent the majority of her time living with Valerie. Our relationship had grown tense. Tense didn't even begin to describe it. Each conversation felt like tiptoeing through a minefield, one wrong phrase away from detonation. "Dad, we need to talk," she said, standing in front of the screen, arms crossed in that classic defiant pose she'd perfected in her teens. I sighed, reaching for the remote to mute the game. "All right, Jess, what's on your mind?" "Why can't you just admit you overreacted?" she fired back. "Mom told me everything." My jaw clenched. "She did she?" "She made a mistake, okay?" she snapped, voice rising. "And you threw away 15 years of marriage because of it." I kept my face neutral, though my hand tightened around the remote. Valerie's storytelling had always been inventive. "It's been 4 years, Dad," Jessa went on, relentless. "Isn't it time you got over it? People mess up. You're not exactly flawless either." I didn't respond. I'd learned that sometimes silence speaks louder than any rebuttal. But to her, my quiet was just another form of stonewalling. "Nothing? Seriously?" she shouted. "You're unbelievable." She threw up her hands in frustration. "You know what Mom says? She says real men forgive cheating." That was the final straw. 4 years of silence. 4 years of shouldering the blame. 4 years of watching the truth rot the bond between me and the only person who still mattered. "Real men forgive cheating," I echoed, slowly placing the remote on the coffee table. "She really said that to you?" Jessa gave a firm nod, her expression unyielding. "Yes, because it's the truth. One dumb mistake doesn't wipe out an entire marriage." I stood up, deliberate but calm. "Sit down, Jessa." "I'd rather not." "Sit down." My voice wasn't raised, but it carried a gravity I rarely used with her. She hesitated, then settled uneasily onto the edge of the couch, alert and cautious. "You want the whole story?" I asked, heading toward the bookshelf across the room. "You think you've heard everything there is to know?" I unlocked a hidden compartment in the bottom shelf and pulled out a slim flash drive. "This," I said, holding it between my fingers, "was something I prayed you'd never have to see." Her boldness dimmed, curiosity flickering in her eyes. "What is that?" "The truth," I said, booting up my laptop. "But Jess, once you see what's on here, you can't go back." She rolled her eyes. "Dad, whatever you've got, I'm not a kid anymore." "This is your last chance," I warned her. "We can pretend this conversation never happened, or I can show you exactly why your mother and I didn't survive." "Just play it," she said firmly. As I inserted the drive and clicked the video file, doubt gnawed at the edge of my resolve. Was this really the right thing to do? But I couldn't take her contempt anymore. Sometimes the only way to stop a wound from festering is to cut out the rot. "Remember, I said as the screen flickered to life. "This is what you asked for." The footage opened with an exterior shot of our old house, a two-story colonial in Oak Park. In the corner, the timestamp read July 17th, exactly 4 years ago. Jessa leaned closer, squinting. "What am I supposed to be looking at?" "Just keep watching." The front door creaked open. Valerie stepped outside, looking immaculate in a red sundress. I had given it to her for her birthday. She checked the time on her watch, scanned the street, then walked toward the mailbox. So she was the one who picked up the mail? Groundbreaking, Jessa muttered under her breath. I didn't say a word. Moments later, a sleek silver Audi pulled into the driveway. A man I didn't recognize got out, tall, stylish, dark-haired, dressed in a sharp, expensive suit. Valerie lit up at the sight of him and moved in his direction. Their embrace lasted far too long to be considered appropriate. And the kiss that followed? Clearly not just friendly. Jessa shifted beside me, her discomfort obvious. "Just a one-time mistake, right?" I said quietly. "She kissed someone," Jessa replied, though her voice lacked certainty. "That doesn't prove—" I pressed fast forward. Same date, different camera, this time filming the interior hallway of our home. The timestamp showed 30 minutes had gone by. Valerie and the same man came into view again, clothes disheveled, laughing as they made their way toward the kitchen. "You had cameras inside the house?" Jessa asked, visibly shocked. "Not at first," I answered. "But when her behavior started setting off alarms, I installed them while she was out visiting her sister." I clicked again. Another recording. Different day, another man. He was younger, with a motorcycle parked outside. "Mom said it happened once, with her boss," Jessa said under her breath. "She said it was a one-time mistake, that you blew it out of proportion." I let out a dry, humorless laugh. "You haven't even seen the worst of it yet." Jessa had gone pale. "There's more?" I didn't answer. I just opened another video. It was our house again, this time recorded 2 weeks later. 3 unfamiliar men entered the front door. Valerie greeted them like old acquaintances. Jessa's hand flew up to her mouth. "I was away on business in Seattle," I said, my tone level. "You were at sleepaway camp? And your mother decided to throw a little party." The next recording showed Valerie and the 3 men heading up the stairs. "Please stop," Jessa said, her voice strained and on the verge of breaking. "I've seen enough." I shut the laptop. "You think you understand, but you don't. Not yet. We can pause if that's what you need." She stared down at her trembling hands. "How many?" she asked. "How many different men were there?" "Over 3 weeks I counted 7, I said. "Some of them came back more than once." Her eyes, so eerily similar to Valerie's, began to fill with tears. "But she always told me—" "I know what she's been telling you," I said softly, cutting her off. "For the past 4 years she's given you her version of the truth. Now you're finally hearing mine." "Why didn't you show me all of this earlier?" she demanded. The anger hadn't disappeared. It had simply shifted direction. "Because she's still your mother," I said gently. "And even after all that happened, I didn't want to be the one to break that connection." Jessa stood up suddenly. "I need some air." As she walked to the front door, I called after her, "Jess, there's more I need to tell you." She stopped with her hand resting on the doorknob but didn't look back. "Not now," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm not ready." She stepped outside, the door clicking shut behind her, leaving me alone with the evidence I'd hoped I'd never have to use. I didn't chase after her. I knew she needed time to absorb everything. The truth rarely lands softly, especially when it dismantles a lie you've been clinging to. I made a cup of coffee and waited in silence, praying she wouldn't leave for good. 40 minutes later, she returned. Her eyes were swollen but no longer teary. The rage had subsided. In its place was something less defined, hurt, disillusionment, maybe both. "Tell me everything," she said, sitting across from me. I nodded and pushed a mug toward her. "I never wanted it to get to this point." "Start from the beginning," she said. I inhaled slowly. "It was about 6 months before the divorce when I first sensed something was wrong. Your mom started to change. Unexplained phone calls, absences she couldn't account for. She often claimed to be working late, despite her office closing hours earlier. All the textbook signs," Jessa said, her voice edged with bitterness. I gave a slow nod. I know, but I kept telling myself I was imagining it. Then I stumbled across a series of hotel receipts, multiple dates, different places. She told me they were tied to business travel. But the credit card statements told another story. Lavish dinners in downtown Chicago, while she swore she was visiting your aunt in Milwaukee. Jessa stared down into her coffee cup. "Why install cameras?" she asked. "Why not just confront her face to face?" "I had to be certain I wasn't just being paranoid," I replied. "If I came at her without proof, she would have spun the story, accused me of being jealous, controlling." "She did that anyway," Jessa murmured. She lifted her head then, her gaze turning sharper. "You mentioned something else, something worse, something I had to know." I paused. This was the moment I'd been dreading all along. "It's about your bedroom," I finally said. Her skin turned ashen. "What are you talking about? My room?" Rather than explain, I opened my laptop and pulled up a specific video file. The timestamp read August 3rd, 4 years earlier. "That was the night you stayed at Lily's for a sleepover," I said gently. The footage began to play. Valerie escorting 2 men into the house, both strangers, different from the ones in earlier clips. They headed upstairs together, laughing, wine glasses in hand. Then the angle changed. "It was a view of your room." Jessa's voice came out as a whisper. "No." Her face went pale. "Not in there." On the screen, Valerie led the men inside, then softly closed the door behind them. "Turn it off," Jessa said, her voice cracking. "Please, shut it off." I closed the laptop just as she leapt to her feet. It slipped from my hands, crashing to the floor and breaking apart. Neither of us moved to retrieve it. "She used my bed!" Jessa cried, horror overtaking her voice. "With all my things still in there, in the space I grew up in?" I said nothing. There wasn't a single word that could make this less unbearable. "Was it only that time?" she asked, arms wrapped tightly around herself. "Did it happen again?" "3 times that I recorded," I said quietly. "Always when you weren't home." Jessa's face twisted in disgust. "Why? What kind of person does that?" "I wish I knew," I answered honestly. "I never made sense of it." She began to pace, trembling from head to toe. "You should have told me," she said. "Maybe," I conceded. "But you were 16. You looked up to her like she hung the stars. I couldn't be the one to take that from you." "So instead you let me blame you," she snapped. "You let me believe you wrecked our family." I didn't argue. She was right. "I need to talk to her," Jessa said suddenly, pulling out her phone. "Right now." Her hands trembled as she dialed. I watched her pacing in circles, fingers tangled in her hair, a nervous habit she hadn't outgrown. "Mom," she said, tone eerily calm, "I need you to come to Dad's right now." I couldn't hear Valerie's response, but I saw Jessa's jaw tighten. "No, I'm not coming to you. You're coming here." A pause. "Because we need to talk." Another pause. Her grip on the phone turned rigid, knuckles white. "I've seen the footage, Mom." Silence followed, dense and suffocating. I could feel the weight of it across the room. "Just come," Jessa said at last, cutting the call before Valerie could speak. She turned to me then, her eyes hard as granite. "She'll be here in 30 minutes. You don't have to do this today," I said softly. "You're still processing." "No," Jessa said firmly. "I spent 4 years believing her lies. 4 years treating you like the enemy. That ends today." I gave a quiet nod, recognizing how much she needed resolution. "What do you need from me?" I asked gently. "Just," she hesitated, "just stay." Those 3 simple words, an honest request for me to remain, landed harder than I was ready for. It had been years since she'd shown any sign she actually wanted me near. We sat in heavy silence. Jessa walked slowly across the room while I wiped up the coffee she'd spilled. Neither of us knew how to begin the conversation waiting between us. Exactly 28 minutes later, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Valerie standing outside, immaculate, as always. She wore tailored jeans, a soft cashmere top, and her hair looked as if it had just been styled. Without acknowledging me, she stepped past, eyes locked solely on Jessa. "Sweetheart, what's happening?" she asked, her voice warm and worried, the rehearsed tone of a loving mother. Jessa didn't move. Her arms were tightly folded, her stance stiff and unyielding. "I want you to explain why you brought men into my bedroom." Valerie flinched, her polished exterior faltering for just a heartbeat. "I don't know what your father's been feeding you, but—" "I saw the footage," Jessa said, cutting her off. "The camera recordings. I saw it all with my own eyes." Valerie's mask slipped again, a flicker of unease flashing before she spun toward me, fury igniting in her gaze. "So this is what you're doing now?" she snapped. "Dragging our daughter into our personal mess?" "Don't," Jessa warned, her voice sharp. "Don't try to twist this. This isn't about him. It's about you and what you did." Valerie exhaled dramatically and shifted strategies. "That was years ago," she said, her tone now calm and measured. "Things weren't good between us back then." "In my room," Jessa snapped, her voice rising. "On my bed, with all of my things around you. Why would you do that?" The directness of the question stunned Valerie into silence. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape route. "I was unhappy," she said at last, more quietly. "Your father and I were having problems." "So that gave you permission to bring strangers into your daughter's room?" Jessa shot back. Valerie's face hardened. "You're too young to understand how complicated adult relationships can be." Jessa let out a short, bitter laugh. "That's your justification, that I'm too young to get why my mother turned my bedroom into her affair zone?" "This isn't an appropriate discussion," Valerie snapped, directing a searing glare at me. "He's filling your head with lies." "Enough!" Jessa yelled. "Stop lying! I saw everything!" Outside, the sky had darkened, storm clouds forming overhead, mirroring the mood in the room. Story 1, The Betrayal Next Door. Valerie's carefully constructed image of a concerned mother began to crumble, replaced by something colder, more calculated. She turned back to me, eyes narrowing. "I hope you're proud of yourself," she said through clenched teeth. "You've poisoned her against me with your edited footage." "Edited?" Jessa repeated, shocked. "That's your defense?" "Sweetheart," Valerie said smoothly, shifting into a calmer tone. "You know how good your father is with technology. You'd be amazed what can be faked with videos these days." I said nothing. This wasn't mine to argue anymore. "Show me more," Jessa said, turning to me. "Let's see how she tries to explain the rest of it." I hesitated. "You're sure?" "Play it." I opened the laptop and selected another clip. This one showed Valerie ushering another unknown man into what used to be our shared bedroom. A different date, but the same behavior. "That's Dr. Warren," Valerie jumped in. "We were discussing a charity fundraiser." "In our bedroom?" I asked, speaking for the first time. Before she could respond, I started the next video, then another. 5 separate days, 7 different men. Jessa watched them all, saying nothing, her face pale and still. At last, she turned to Valerie, her voice shaky. "Every time I called you from camp, every time you said you missed me," Jessa said in a low voice, "you were sneaking strange men into our house." Valerie's polished demeanor finally cracked. "You don't understand what it was like being married to him," she snapped, gesturing toward me. "He was never home, emotionally absent." Jessa's voice rose sharply. "So that's your excuse for bringing men into my bedroom?" Valerie's reply came fast, cold. "It wasn't about you." The room went still. Jessa's eyes narrowed. "Wow," she whispered. "That might actually be the first honest thing you've said today." Valerie looked startled, as if only now realizing what she'd admitted. "Jessa, that's not how I meant it," she began. "Yes, it is," Jessa cut in, her tone flat. "It wasn't about me. It wasn't about Dad. It was always about you." She stood up and grabbed her car keys from the table. "Where are you going?" Valerie demanded. "To pack my stuff," Jessa replied, her voice steady and emotionless. "You're being ridiculous," Valerie scoffed. "You're upset right now, I understand that, but—" "I'm not living here anymore," Jessa said firmly. "I'll stay with Dad or find my own place, but I'm done with the lies." Valerie's expression turned icy. "You're making a huge mistake." Jessa paused at the doorway. "No, Mom. For the first time in years, I'm finally seeing everything clearly." She walked out, the sound of the door closing behind her like a final verdict. The silence that followed seemed to echo through the room. After she left, Valerie's rigid posture gave way. Her steps turned restless as she began pacing, fury flaring in her eyes. "Well," she snapped, "I hope you're satisfied. You finally got what you wanted." "This was never about me," I said, keeping my voice even. "It was about Jessa finally knowing the truth." "Truth?" Valerie let out a dry, bitter laugh. "Spare me. This was your plan from the beginning. You waited and waited until you had the perfect moment to poison her against me." I shook my head. If that had been my goal, I would have shown her those videos a long time ago. Valerie froze mid-stride, her glare seething with fury. "What did you expect?" she hissed. "That she'd find out I wasn't perfect and just run straight back into your arms?" "I expected what actually happened," I replied. "That she'd see the facts and make up her own mind." Valerie snatched up her purse, her hands trembling. "This isn't over." "It is for me," I said quietly. "It has been for a long time." She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The house, once chaotic with tension, now felt unbearably silent. There was no sense of victory, only a quiet, exhausted relief. At least Jessa knew the truth now. My phone buzzed with a message from her. "At the house. Mom showed up. Things went bad. Be there soon." I replied, "No rush. Guest room's ready. Stay as long as you need." Exactly an hour later, the doorbell rang. Jessa stood on the porch holding 2 overstuffed suitcases and a battered backpack. Her eyes were red and puffy. "That was quick," I said gently, reaching out to help her with the bags. "She didn't exactly make it difficult," Jessa replied, voice raw. "She tried to lock me out of my own room." My eyebrows lifted. "She what?" "When I got there, she was already waiting," Jessa said, letting the backpack slide to the floor. "She said I was overreacting, told me to calm down. But when I started packing anyway, she actually tried to stop me from going into my room." "Jesus," I muttered under my breath. Then she switched tactics, started crying, begging me not to go, said I was the one breaking the family apart. Jessa let out a dry, humorless laugh, as if she hadn't already done that. I led her into the kitchen and turned on the stove to boil water. What finally made her back off? "I told her if she didn't move, I'd call the police," Jessa said flatly, "and I'd show them everything you showed me." I winced. She didn't take that well, I'm guessing. "She called me an ungrateful bitch," Jessa whispered. The hurt in her voice was still fresh. She insisted she'd given up everything for my sake, and this apparently was how I repaid her. Classic Valerie, I muttered under my breath. Forever the self-sacrificing victim, never the one at fault. Jessa looked up at me, a different expression in her eyes now, one searching for something deeper. "All this time, why didn't you try to get custody? Why did you let me live with her, knowing exactly how she was?" It was the question I'd been expecting since all of this came to light. "Because she's still your mother," I said softly. "And because fighting for custody would have meant exposing those recordings, bringing them into court, letting lawyers see them, judges, maybe even you." I paused, letting the weight of that land. "I couldn't do that to you." Jessa dropped her eyes to her lap. "So instead, you let me hate you." I said nothing. There was no need. The days that followed were strange, a sort of quiet adjustment for both of us. Jessa moved into the guest room, filling drawers and a closet that had sat empty for years. I started buying snacks I remembered she liked, adding a second plate at dinner without thinking, lowering the volume on the TV out of habit. We both treaded carefully, unsure of our footing. Even the smallest interactions felt awkward, like relearning a language we used to speak fluently. We hadn't lived as father and daughter in so long, even the ordinary moments felt foreign. 3 nights in, I heard her crying through the wall. I stood outside her door for a long time, not knowing whether to knock or walk away, unsure if any comfort I offered would be welcome or rejected. Before I could decide, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Valerie. "Tell Jessa to answer her phone. This silent treatment is immature and needs to stop." I didn't respond. Jessa, it turned out, had been getting the same barrage. 43 texts yesterday, she said the next morning over breakfast, eyes still puffy from the night before, and 17 voicemails. "You don't have to say a word to her until you're ready." I said gently. I know. She stirred her cereal, barely touching it. I blocked her number last night. I gave a slight nod, not sure what else to say. She was an adult now, at least legally, but the damage left behind had frozen parts of her in place, leaving her vulnerable in ways that didn't match her age. She emailed me too, she continued. She says she's hiring a lawyer, claims you brainwashed me with illegal surveillance footage. I let out a slow breath. That sounds like her. Don't confront what she did, just attack the evidence. Would the recordings even hold up? She asked. Legally, I mean? Hard to say, I admitted. In Illinois, it's legal to record in your own home, but those hidden cameras, that's murkier. Not that it matters. I never planned on using them in court. Jessa's brow furrowed, concern creeping in. What if she actually tries to sue you? She won't, I said, confident. It's just a bluff. If she files anything, she's admitting the footage exists, which means admitting to the truth. She studied me, cautious. You really believe that? I know your mom, I told her. Her reputation means everything. She won't jeopardize that just to go after me. Jessa nodded slowly, digesting that. Then she hesitated. What about college? Valerie and I had originally agreed to split the cost of her tuition, but after everything that happened, I doubted that arrangement would survive. Don't stress about that, I reassured her. I'll cover whatever she doesn't. Your education comes first. I saw the tension ease in her shoulders. Thanks, Dad, she said quietly. Then, after a pause, can I ask something else? Of course. When did you stop loving her? Was it when you found out she cheated? Or was it before then? The question caught me off guard. For a moment I thought about deflecting, but she deserved honesty. It didn't happen in a single moment, I said. It was slow, but I think the real shift came when I saw she wasn't the person I thought I'd married. That's when I realized the love I had wasn't for who she truly was. Jessa nodded, thoughtful. Yeah, that adds up. She stood, sliding her chair back. I've got a paper due tomorrow, time to work. As she walked out of the kitchen, it hit me. That was the most genuine conversation we'd shared in years. 2 weeks after she moved in, I came home to find Jessa sitting at the kitchen table with Lily, her best friend from high school. The moment I stepped inside, they fell silent. One quick glance between them told me I'd walked in on something serious. Don't mind me, I said lightly as I headed to the kitchen. Just grabbing a drink. Actually, Dad, Jessa spoke up, we were just talking about you. I paused mid-motion, the bottle of water hovering near my lips. Should I be nervous? Lily offered a smile, real and unguarded, the first genuine one I'd seen from her in what felt like ages. Not this time, Mr. Chase. I sat down, intrigued. After the divorce, Lily had firmly planted herself in Valerie's camp, treating me with the same chilly distance Jessa once had. I told her everything, Jessa explained. Even showed her a couple of the less intense videos. Lily's smile faded in an instant. I owe you an apology, she said quietly. I believed every word Mrs. Chase told us. You weren't alone, I said, trying to ease her guilt. Valerie knows how to spin things. That's putting it mildly, Lily muttered. She's been blowing up my phone, she added, trying to get me to convince Jessa to move back in. Jessa slid her phone across the table toward me. Here, look at what she sent me this morning. I scrolled through an endless stream of increasingly panicked texts from Valerie. One message made me grit my teeth. Aaron always had cameras in the house. He's obsessive and paranoid. Those videos are probably fake. He's always been jealous of any guy who even looked at me. She's officially gone into damage control mode, I said, handing the phone back. Oh, you haven't even heard the half of it, Lily said grimly. She's been telling people you doctored the footage, that you manipulated Jessa into turning against her, cutting off ties with everyone. Darvo, Jessa muttered. I gave her a questioning look. It's a psych term, deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender, she explained. We studied it last semester. Pride stirred in me, watching how composed and clear-eyed she was. Your mom's got that strategy down to a science. Well, it's starting to fall apart, Lily said with conviction. The more she talks, the more people are starting to doubt her version. She even called my cousin Tyler, Jessa added. But the way she spoke about you creeped him out. He called me afterward, just to ask what was really going on. What did you tell him? I asked, genuinely curious how she'd explained it. I told him the truth, she said simply. That Mom cheated on you with more than one guy, kept it hidden for years, and tried to make it look like you were the villain. I nodded slightly, deeply moved by how candid she was, and by her willingness to defend me. Anyway, Lily went on, I stopped by because Mrs. Reynolds, the queen of neighborhood gossip, has been plastering Valerie's story all over Facebook. Jessa let out an irritated sigh. Great. Actually, Lily said with a wry smile, it might help us. She's being so over the top, it's making people suspicious. When Mrs. Wilson questioned her about something, Valerie completely lost it, Lily said. She accused half the neighborhood of secretly siding with you. Truth always finds its way out, I said quietly. No matter how hard someone tries to hide it. Lily nodded, then checked her watch. I should get going. But really, Mr. Chase, I'm sorry I judged you without knowing the full story. After she left, Jessa gave me a small smile. You're starting to win people over, and you're not even trying. 3 months had passed since Jessa moved in. Life had found a gentler rhythm. She was finishing her semester strong, and I'd adjusted my work schedule to spend more time at home. Slowly but surely, we were rebuilding what had been broken between us. Then, one quiet Sunday afternoon, Valerie showed up at the front door, completely unannounced. When I opened it, she stood there in her usual impeccable outfit, though something about her expression looked unsteady. I need to speak with Jessa, she said, skipping any form of greeting. She's not here, I replied truthfully. Jessa had gone to the library to prep for her finals. Valerie's eyes shifted, glancing toward the driveway. But her car's still there. Battery died yesterday, I said without missing a beat. She stepped out of the Uber and immediately scanned past me, trying to see inside the house. I think I've given her enough time, she said. This silence can't go on forever. That's not your call to make, I responded calmly. Jessa will speak to you when she's ready. Valerie's composed exterior began to falter. She's my daughter too, you don't get to keep her from me. I'm not keeping her from anything, I said. She's 20 now, old enough to make her own decisions. Oh, come on, she snapped, her voice growing sharper. You seriously expect me to believe you had no influence? You poisoned her against me with those recordings. I exhaled slowly. We both know what those recordings exposed, Valerie. She waved her hand dismissively. That was ages ago. One rough patch in our marriage doesn't erase everything I did as a mother. It wasn't just the affairs, I said quietly. It was the dishonesty that followed, and the fact that it happened in her space. At that, she flinched, the first crack in her armor. I already apologized, she muttered, her voice tight. I know it was wrong. But have you ever said that to her? I asked. Without justifying it, without shifting blame? She didn't answer. Her silence said more than words could. She needs time, I went on. Not just to hear you say sorry, but to hear the truth. For everything you did, and for how long you twisted her perception of me. I never... You did, I said, not harshly, but with conviction. Valerie stared at me for a long moment, then her shoulders slumped slightly. At least tell her I came by? I will. She turned to leave, but paused at the curb. You know, she said, none of this would have happened if you'd just deleted those files after the divorce. I shook my head, stunned by her inability to accept fault. No, Valerie, none of this would have happened if you hadn't brought strangers into our daughter's room. That landed. She stiffened, then turned and walked briskly to her car without another word. Later that evening, when Jessa returned home, I told her Valerie had stopped by. Do you feel ready to talk to her? I asked gently. She paused before answering. I think I am, she said finally. Not to forgive her yet, but there are things I need to say. Whatever you decide, I told her, I'll support you. And for the first time in many years, I saw unguarded trust in her eyes. Exactly 1 year after Jessa had moved in, we marked the day with takeout from her favorite Thai place. It was incredible how much had changed in just 12 months, not only between us, but in who we'd each become. Do you remember the day you showed me those videos? She asked, twirling noodles on her fork. I was livid. With me, I said. With everyone, she corrected, but mostly with myself. for not seeing it sooner. You didn't do anything wrong, I said. You were a daughter who wanted to believe her mother. She thought about that for a moment. Maybe. Still, I should have asked more questions. You were 16 when it all fell apart, I reminded her. No teenager should have to unravel a mess like that. She nodded lightly and then changed the subject. I saw Mom yesterday. That surprised me. Their progress had been slow and measured. Limited visits, a few casual coffees. How did it go? Better than I expected, she said. She started going to therapy. Really? I asked, unable to hide my shock. Valerie had always seen therapy as something for the weak, never for her. She says she wants to understand why she did what she did, Jessa continued, setting her fork down. I'm not sure I trust that yet. But it's the first time she's admitted anything without spinning it. That counts for something, I said. Are you worried I'll move back in with her? Jessa laughed at the idea. Not even slightly. I'm where I belong. Relief swept over me. I'd grown used to having her around. The music playing from the guest room, the pile of textbooks on the table, the cereal she liked always on hand. Anyway, she added, my internship starts next month, and this place is way closer to the office. I smiled, proud of the resilience she'd shown. Despite everything, she'd kept her grades high, secured a competitive internship, and begun rebuilding her life with healthy boundaries of her own making. Dad, she said softly, I don't think I ever properly thanked you. For what? For being patient, for letting me get to the truth in my own time, even when it meant being the bad guy for years. I swallowed, emotion rising in my throat. You never owed me thanks for that. I do, she insisted. You protected me from the worst of it for as long as you could. And then, when I was ready to face it, you stood beside me. That's the measure of a true father. We wrapped up dinner with light-hearted talk, her upcoming classes for the fall semester, my recent step up at work, and the movie we had tickets for later that weekend. The heavy history between us hadn't vanished, but its weight had changed. It no longer anchored us in silence, but had become something we were learning to carry, side by side. Later that night, as I loaded the dishwasher, my mind wandered to a memory from the year before. Jessa had stood in this very room, repeating her mother's words with conviction. Real men forgive cheating. Back then, she didn't grasp what was really at stake, but not for the reasons she believed. Forgiveness isn't about blind acceptance or denial. It's about facing the hurt, establishing boundaries that protect your dignity, and deciding how to move on without losing yourself. As I looked at my daughter now, strong, wise, and full of heart, I understood that we had both arrived at that understanding together.